Good afternoon, Abbotsford residents. I'm Mr. Pelican. I'm running for your mayor of Abbotsford. I'm encouraging a lot of other people to run for mayor and council. We have to wipe out what sits in the Abbotsford city. It was originating themselves. They were walking over Abbotsford residents. They were blocking democracies, but they were also using the private police to threaten so they could hold power. The Mackenzie Bog, people got deadly sick, and it was the mayor's job to fire Magna and bring city bureaucrats up and kick them out for allowing that to happen. The decision on Rob Funk's of Sage changing the zoning, council went in with Henry. I want to say today, Abbotsford and myself owe the mission men and women in the RCMP a tremendous thanks. A far-fetched story when we went over to the RCMP. They didn't look like Abbotsford was nuts and I was nuts. They pulled a chair up and their eyes went open wide when they heard what came out of Henry Brown's son's mouth, Darren Braun, as Economic Development Officer when his dad was the mayor. They knew that collaborating, preferential treatment, and the son wasn't supposed to be in front of his dad and counsel up in Henry's house. They knew how them decisions were being done. The elite security force of Canada, the RCMP, were not going to be fooled by Henry Brown, Ed Fast, Mike DeYoung, or the Abbotsford Private Police. They knew to look right by that this was insider trading and they needed to hold power of the Abbotsford city. For many years, I've been on this podcast, and you see this journey with Abbotsford residents to fight for my city. And I want to say, every day, we owe the mission men and women in the RCMP. As your mayor, I will start immediately the transformation of the Abbotsford Police becoming the RCMP without keeping a one of them. Criminal charges should have took place on Henry Brown, and they should have pulled the witnesses in. They weren't. This was a buddy-buddy system. Today, I'm in the Abbotsford Flats, not far from Boundary Road by the U.S. border. This is where the flood came across. Brad Viss is in Ottawa, begging on Carney, and he's crying. He almost broke down. He figures he can fool Carney and keep lobbying for the infrastructure money. Carney knows, the same as I know, the money is not going to any of these victims. It's going to the establishment. Brad Viss never went in with a portfolio showing the farmers' financial burdens that they suffered, lost to their cattle, lost to their equipment, and what it cost to put their homes back. He didn't. He kept going for Barrowtown in the money so he could load the city of Abbotsford and not help the farmers. You saw Bruce Bam in the MLA not lobby for that money to go into Ross's hands for that money, for that infrastructure, because he knew it wasn't going to these farmers. But Carney must look at it like this. Carney saw sandbags tugged into Barrowtown by Jake's Contracting and then tugged out. Where did that money and that sand go, and who got them minerals? Then Carney saw gravel trucked in, paid by the province, BC taxpayers, 3/4-inch crust all along the road for no reason at all, then tucked out. Where did that money go, and who got them minerals? Then we started to build the wall, Jakes did. 3 times they were doing this job to empty the city bank accounts, and the city staff told me. Patricia Ddriessen, that went out and wanted to be a voice. She created a new party. Cannot answer to the farmers where the $76 million is. Then Carney saw all the rocks on Gladys Avenue hauled on Abbotsford taxpayers' dollars at hundreds and hundreds of dollars on the CP track that's a federal government controlled. They control the track with the RCMP and the CP police to remove the homeless for Ron Funk's sales office of Sage and put them all in front of the Abbotsford City and the Abbotsford Police. And again, Carney saw an injunction taken to remove the homeless by the Abbotsford chief rather than calling it out. Then Carney saw $500 million that the ag minister was coming in here with David Eby to take and move the Abbotsford's Ag Center up by UFV for $500 million. And we're going to move this and leave all the farmers in harm's way, something that wasn't done. Then Carney must have saw the $77 million for a brand new Abbotsford police station when Darren Braun, the economic development officer, and I could have told you we could retrofit the building on top for $5 million. They didn't. It was to embezzle that money to the contractors and walk it out the door. When I read them podcasts, Jake's Contracting left Abbotsford. And Brad Viss knew this. Instead of Brad Viss going in and arguing the fact to Carney, we need to come in and open criminal investigations into the Abbotsford city of where Barreltown money is, why Andy Sidhu's land was lifted, why Vitalis bought that, and why Andy Sidhu was allowed to build a new building. And Dave Sidhu's the city council, and so is Ddriessen. Then we saw Archway Community Services, Rob Santiago, with Patricia Ddriessen, who's the director in Archway, raises money for the name of the farmers, using their suffering and everything they went through to raise money to go buy more real estate, give his CEOs a raise, and not help the farmers. That there should have called an investigation at the federal level, should have brought Pacific Can in that registrates all the nonprofits. Then Ddriessen, who contracts through Perfect Sense, her company, Perfect Sense, to Archway, and she's the city council's, allows Rob Santiago to waive his taxes as a nonprofit when he made profit. Knowing that Abbotsford and residents know that as soon as you make profit, you cannot have your taxes waived. But why? Why didn't Ddriessen call it out, the voice? Because Ddriessen was contracting to Archway. Ddriessen stood to gain the same as somebody stands to gain when you're selling fentanyl. So she couldn't call out the wrong by Archway. She couldn't call out what she was doing with Perfect Sense, and she couldn't. But Ddriessen now, Patricia Ddriessen, saw Abbotsford First destroyed. So she went out to register a new party called The Voice. The Voice. But Ddriessen was no voice for the Mackenzie Bog, and still is no voice for the Mackenzie Bog. People got deadly sick. Ddriessen's no voice for these farmers. She's going to try to tell the farmers she's got ties and her family was here. She's no voice where the $76 million went to Jake's Contracting for hauling that sand and gravel 3 times. Ddriessen was no voice all the rocks on Gladys Avenue for these farmers. Ddriessen was no voice against Dave Sidhu, a sitting city council member that increased his dad's portfolio on Tracy Road, rushed permits, and bought Vitalis that didn't need a corporate handout. But Ddriessen went out and did this. This is the good work of RCMP that look for these things. But Ddriessen knew, as long as Henry could control the Abbotsford police and a few politicians, Ddriessen wouldn't go under criminal investigations. Ddriessen believes that if she holds the city council job, I shouldn't be prosecuted or charged. Archway Community Service raised money off of victims, Rob Santiago. He went out with that money off of them victims and then went and bought real estate. And Ddriessen wouldn't call it out because she was benefiting off of it by contracting her company, Perfect Sense. And Amric Moran is asking to be a city council now. And he knows enough to stay away from Ddriessen, but he don't call Ddriessen out because he works for Archway. These people were in the city to inflate and steal from Abbotsford residents. When I took the information over to the Mission RCMP, they never looked at Abbotsford or me. They looked straight forward and said, these bastards, pardon my language, are increasing and stealing from Abbotsford taxpayers. They're using the Abbotsford News to paint a different picture. They used the Chamber of Commerce, which they controlled, and then they used the downtown DBA. And then they used the Abbotsford police when anybody came forward and went into their MLA, figuring their MLA would do right. And the MLA would tip off the mayor, and the mayor would send the Abbotsford police out. Ddriessen was no voice when Abbotsford First, Sandy Blue, the night she was being elected, and in the debates at the sports center, said, I stuck my hand up the dress and grabbed her on her whippy wrapper. It was Rianne Gasper, that is the sitting MLA for Abbotsford Mission, that called it out with Barty Sandhu. Barty said they planned it the night before and they were going to do this to help load Ross Siemens. These filthy, disgusting acts just took place for money. It wasn't about getting the job to better Abbotsford, it was about them. And Abbotsford needs to come to this an understanding that Abbotsford needs a new council, it needs a new mayor, but Abbotsford is long overdue for the RCMP to walk in here and take it over. Because the RCMP would have known to pull Jake's books and seize their accounts, that they're embezzling that money. The RCMP knew when I went over to him, why is Ross Siemens hauling rocks on Gladys Avenue when that's the CP and CN's buffer and they got police called the CP or the CN police? And the RCMP patrol that. It was to remove the homeless to help Ron Funk of Sage, his property. Henry Brown went in and he figured he had it all isolated. He had a private police department that he could control. He would never face charges or investigations. He had an MP called Ed Fast and an MLA, Mike DeYoung. He had Abbotsford News through Rick Rakes, Tyler Olson, Vicky, and Ken. Then he used the Chamber of Commerce to make sure no outsiders could ever come forward. It was a mission RCMP. The mission RCMP painted a different picture when they asked me to put my name forward and jeopardize what Henry was after, the golden egg. Henry had to take extraordinary measures to protect his community official plan. He got in his Alexis car, tried to end my life, fled from the scene. When the RCMP mission knew that Mike Sir covered it up, they knew Abbotsford Police now had to be questioned of how many dirty officers there were. It put me on the world stage to make sure if they did this, you imagine what they're doing to other victims that want to come forward. And how many other people they've ran out of town. How many other people have they framed? We need a police department that is transparency. You can walk in without being fearing your life or worrying a task force threatening you or being chased through town. We need a police department that will sit down, fire their officers, investigate their officers. We need a police department that will rotate their guys so they don't get to know people in the community. And we need the police department to show that it's there for the general public and not attack it. I can offer that as your mayor by transforming the Abbotsford Police into the RCMP, and they know that. This is why they chased me up at Ledgeview. This is why they chase me all the time. They realize their jobs are gone. And they know the same as I do, not a one of them will be transformed into the RCMP. I made it clear to Abbotsford, and I'll make it clear again. There's some good men in the Abbotsford Police, Kern, Dix, Kaminsky, but they do not deserve to stay there. They have a duty. When these men were doing what they were doing and covering up the attempted murder and the threats on my life, to call each other out, and they didn't do it. It was a buddy system. They're going to be propped up by political politicians. But the question now to Patricia Ddriessen, it's too late to be a voice for Abbotsford, Ddriessen. It's far too late. Abbotsford needs a leader, Abbotsford needs forensic audits, and Abbotsford needs the RCMP. And the first thing we're going to do is go after Vitalis, and we're going to go after Ron Funk, and we're going to get the best in that do it. And the only people that can do it, that we're there for Abbotsford and we're there for me, is the RCMP. I commit that to Abbotsford, I commit it to all my farmers, and I commit it to every family. The RCMP have to take over Abbotsford, and we'll get them books open faster than you could ever imagine. And you could see it. Ddriessen is aware of it. You could see council not taking pictures with each other. You could see MLAs and MPs. You could see Brad Viss and everybody scattered. Henry Brown crossed the yellow line, the sacred yellow line, when he decided to take the law in his own hands. The Abbotsford Police and city councils crossed it when they decided they were going to cover it up because they owed Henry Brown. I'm live. Abbotsford, Fraser Valley, Abbotsford Flats.